Republicans looking to pull funding from Planned Parenthood have Washington whipped up. You like that alliteration, gentlemen? They almost shut the government down over it. They pushed the Speaker of the House to resign over it. But here's the interesting part for you. A USA Today poll, a couple of other polls show 65% of Americans want funding to continue for Planned Parenthood. Nolan, have Republicans lost their minds targeting Planned Parenthood like this? What's the strategy behind this?
Well, they've made a political miscalculation again, I think, on this. They should have kept the debate focused on late-term abortions. I think that's an important discussion to have, and I think that's where they had the American people's support. What's the point of viability? What sort of regulations are needed to make sure there's no exploitation and make sure we're not killing viable fetuses? They had the American people there. When they turned it on Planned Parenthood, all of a sudden then they played right into the Democratic narrative that there's a war on women, and you don't hear anybody talking about late-term abortions. All you hear about is the war on women. They should have known that. They've been through this before, and yet they just keep plunging down that road.
Another thing that crossed my mind this week in looking at the hearings that happened with Cecile Richards, who's the head of Planned Parenthood, was just how hearings have become just a show.
It's a circus,
and a waste of time. Quite
honestly.
Yeah,
no, something like this is a waste of time because in the end, they're not going to pull funding. I mean, there's no way they will do that. The consequences at the polls next year would be absolutely devastating if they did. This is about raising money, right? And I guess I would disagree with Nolan a little bit about the foolishness of this. In a lot of ways, the opponents of Planned Parenthood have managed to win that war on one side of the equation. Think about how think about how we define the terms, right? People call it partial birth abortion. I was surprised that you used the term late-term abortion, which is the proper term, but most people call it partial birth abortion. That is a sign of the winning rhetoric of the anti-Planned Parenthood forces that I think matters. And when they do this kind of thing, they are raising money on their side of the aisle. I mean, there are a lot of people who are really upset with that issue and some others that Planned Parenthood is involved in. I think they may have pushed it too far because now you're sitting there talking about pulling funding, and I don't think a majority of Americans support that. But I do think that there is something peculiar about the way Republicans return to this issue again and again, and I don't think it's to sort of sink themselves. There is some advantage here, and they have won the rhetorical war over this issue in some way.
It's going to it plays right into the narrative of that there's a war on women. That's all anybody's talking about. That's not the issue.
So why are they doing it?
Well, that's a good question, and there's a lot of people in the party who are asking that question. John Boehner asked that question.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why not focus on, keep your eyes on the prize, if you will, and not pick divisive fights?
So were you surprised when he then suddenly resigned, that this was kind of the last straw that pushed him?
I don't know if this was the last straw or there was other things going on. I think everybody was surprised by the Boehner resignation. I think, again, I wrote last week that the party's divided on multiple planes, and if it's got an excellent opportunity with the Democrats sort of in disarray to retake the White House, but it can't retake the White House as long as it's fighting. They're fighting with each other. They just can't.
And they're fighting with each other going into an election year as well. And people are watching this, and of course, they averted the government shutdown. They pushed it, till December 11th. But Stephen, what do you see coming out of this?
Well, I mean, I think again, the advantage keeps going to the people who are pushing this. Think of the presidential candidates who are in Congress who keep talking about this. There's a reason they keep doing that, and I think that they smell some advantage in the polls by continuing to raise this issue, and that's why they're doing it. I don't think it's as self-destructive as the popular narrative has it. I think if you push it too far, it will be, and obviously you can't pull funding. But for now, before you get into people actually showing up and voting at the polls in January and February, I think this is part of their bread and butter politics.